I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. First item on the agenda is the approval of the August 24, 2017 minutes.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is call to the public. Anybody here want anything to say? Mr. Banstra,
Aye.
how you doing?
Dear members of the board, I'm John Banstra of Mahaska County, relating coordinated comments with Danny Neutron from Pella, who is unable to attend this meeting. We request these written comments be included in the minutes of the meeting. Item 1. What is the status of the 28E lawsuit between Mahaska County and the cities of Pella and Oskaloosa? Rationale. The actions of the board violate the intent of the 28E agreement in that one of the three parties, Mahaska County, is not represented in the construction contract discussions or project direction. See 28E Article 1, Section C, Article 3, Section 2, and 4A Article 7, Section 5. The current 28E agreement establishing this board does not contain any member conflict resolution activities. Example, conflict resolution committee, third-party arbitrator, etc. Therefore, any construction planning that does not include input from all three parties is fundamentally flawed. I do not think I need to remind you that all construction takes place in Mahaska County. The status of the lawsuits is therefore public information, in addition to any public funds to settle a lawsuit, pay penalties, or legal fees incurred in reaching an out-of-court settlement. This board is spending our public money. We have the right to know where it goes, budgeted or not. Item number 2, Article 3, Section 4D, last sentence states the secretarial duties may be performed by staff, not the financial treasurer duties. That's the responsibility of the not represented treasurer party representing Mahaska County. How does the board legally spend money, example, establish contracts without the 28E designated responsible officer? Article 7, Section 5 does not apply since the responsibility board officer treasurer is not physically on the board. Staff can do the staffing or groundwork, but the treasurer is designated responsible individual. The coordinating agency per Article 4, Section 2A is responsible to the executive committee treasurer for proper financial actions. Mr. Hanson, chair, said via personal email he believes the next phase of the project will be funded by the headquarters FAA. We request, please release the documents that support this claim. After all, 90% of $40 million comes from the U.S. government struggling with an annual budget. Federal project funding is highly questionable. Item 4, after land procurement is funded by the existing 28E agreement, if H2 FAA funding or reimbursement does not materialize or is delayed beyond the existing timeline of the 2025 completion for whatever reason, what is this board's plan to manage this project? Where is this plan available for public review and comment? Per the 28E agreement, Article 13, Section 2, this board does not have a closure date or event. Rationale, this public board is accountable to all their citizens, city and county, for having the project management options. Build as desired, partial build, or terminate. Item 5, why has the FAA environmental assessment public comments replies not been posted on the SCRAA public website 6 months after release? Example, May 2017, rationale. My comments were obtained via hard copy from the Pella City Clerk. Those comments are included in Appendix O, which is not available on the board's public website. Is this a clerical error or an intentional oversight? What areas of the project are hidden in the shadows? I remind you, as members of this board, you work for the citizens of the cities and the counties you represent. Item 6, I leave you with this parting thought. What value does each board member give to history? A dollar amount, family life, personal life, sense of community, time and peace of mind, and legacy. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
I'd like to present this.
You bet. Thank you.
I make a motion to enter that into the minutes.
Okay, there's a motion to include this, I'll call it a letter, in the minutes. Is there a second?
Second?
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Would anyone else like to speak tonight? Okay, very good. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is resolution number 20, entitled Resolution Approving Airport Engineering Services Contract with HDR Engineering, Inc. for the regional airport. Mike, you want to
Yes, sir.
give us a little presentation?
Yep, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And as the chairman stated, what this proposed resolution would do would approve a professional engineering services agreement with HDR Engineering Incorporated, and this would be for the next phase of the proposed regional airport project. Now, as background on this, the South Central Regional Airport Agency Board selected HDR Engineering after a comprehensive selection solicitation process that involved 4 engineering firm proposals. So also important to note that this procedure, our selection procedure, was in accordance with the Federal Aviation Administration's rules and standards for selecting consultants, and ultimately was approved by the Federal Aviation Administration. Now, the proposed agreement that we are entertaining this evening is for the next phase of the project, and when we talk about the next phase of the project, what we often refer to as likely tasks that will be associated with the next phase would be any remaining documentation associated with the environmental assessment phase of the project, land acquisition services, and also what we have is financial reporting and also grant assistance by the consultant as well. And then the big component of the phase would be engineering designs and construction observation services for the proposed regional airport. Now, the agreement that we have in front of us this evening is characterized as a master agreement. It's very important to note that there are no financial terms associated with the master agreement. Rather, what the master agreement identifies and spells out are the standards to be used by the consultant in performing the task for the next phase of the project. Likewise, the master agreement also addresses the liability issues associated with performing the project as well. In addition, there is a section in towards the back of the contract that has the federal terms and conditions that are required for all architectural and engineering contracts to be administered and funded by the federal government. That is a part of the component of this project as well. Now, it's very important to note what we're considering this evening would be a master agreement. The master agreement spells out the overall framework of the professional standards to be utilized by the consultant for the next phase of the project. The individual tasks for the next phase of the project will be issued via task orders by the South Central Regional Airport Agency Board. And the advantage, before we get to the advantage of the task order system, the reason why that is being proposed is when you look at the task orders and the tasks ranging from land acquisition services to engineering design and construction observation services, there's an uncertainty right now when those services would be, when they would be occurred. And so what the thought is by issuing individual task orders as the tasks are identified by the board, it gives the board more control over this and able to identify the exact scope of services for that individual task. And the financial fees can be negotiated on the individual task as they occur. It's very important to note that the consultant will only be authorized by task orders authorized by the South Central Regional Airport Agency. However, I would also like to bring attention to the board as far as the Federal Aviation Administration's rules and requirements. When we consider individual task orders and you look at the dollar amounts that could potentially be with individual task orders, it's very important to note that any task order that might be over $100,000 in fees, we will be required to obtain an independent cost estimate for that task order. And with that, the reason I just want to caution that is if we consider task orders for the project on there that we need to build in some lead time to be able to obtain the independent cost estimate and also get approval through the Federal Aviation Administration for that task order as well. There's going to be additional lead time associated with it. So it's a little different than what's happened in the past, but with the task order, the federal requirements are attributed to the size of the task order. In this case, the threshold is $100,000 for any task over $100,000 that kicks in the Federal Aviation's requirements. We will be required to obtain independent cost estimates for that task order. And finally, Mr. Chairman, just to wrap up my presentation this evening, I want to also mention that the Federal Aviation Administration, if the board were to approve the contract this evening, our recommendation is approval of the contract subject to any recommended changes by the Federal Aviation Administration. And I want to make it very clear, on the master agreement, the Federal Aviation Administration does not approve the agreement. However, they like to review the agreements, and they oftentimes will have recommendations for airport sponsors for changes to the contract. So what we have this evening is conditional approval subject to any changes that the Federal Aviation Administration may suggest for the benefit of the agency. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation this evening. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions the board may have on this item.
Okay, thank you.
For purpose of discussion, I'll move that we accept this recommendation from the staff to
Okay.
approve the contract.
All right.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion, questions?
Is it standard procedure like the FAA has these requirements? I guess I'm a little, I don't have a problem with that, but I understand that we're specifying the standards to which the engineering firm handles, but we don't have control over the cost because they have to bring in independent estimators for cost. Is that how that works, or am I mistaken?
No, that's a very good point. On any task order, we would assume that there'd be a draft submitted by the engineer
Yes.
to the board for consideration. We would review the task order for the appropriateness of fees. That would be done by Mike and I.
Make sure it fits the FAA standards and so forth, and then you,
Yeah, we'd review them all regardless of the
Yeah,
dollar
gotcha.
amount for reasonableness.
Right.
That will occur regardless of that at our level. What happens at the Federal Aviation Administration level with the individual task orders for the services and their thresholds, what's required above $100,000 is above staff review in order to approve the contract. What we have to do for that is we have to go out and identify another engineering firm that didn't bid on this
Right.
project. We have to utilize them. We have to hand them the scope of services that's been negotiated by the board for that.
yes.
And at that point in time, they would not see the fees charged by HDR, but they would give us an independent cost estimate if they were on the project, what they would charge to do the project, and then we would have an independent cost estimate. We would have the fees proposed by HDR, and as long as they're within an allowable range, we can proceed with that. But before proceeding, we have to disclose that information to the FAA. We also have to document on the task order our negotiations with HDR, and we have to present a written summary. They will respond back once they see the independent cost estimate and the write-up and the negotiations to get to that point, and they'll give you either approval to proceed or not.
That's the way I understood it before. I kind of get that. Does it concern only task orders over 100,000, or is it all?
It's only
Below and above.
It is our understanding in talking, there have been discussions with the Federal Aviation Administration on the project, and they have verbally stated, as far as the task orders, that they're okay with proceeding this way. We will re-verify that again during the review, but it's on the individual task order. It is not on the cumulative.
On the
task order.
cumulative. So
So
each
it's a-
individual one, if it's under 100, you don't have to go through this process.
Right.
Is that correct?
The external third-party
Yes.
review, but
Right.
rest assured, there will be a vigorous review.
Oh, yeah,
again,
I understand
regardless.
that. I just want to know the process that's involved so we don't get blindsided by it.
Now, and the reason I was just mentioning this is for the larger task orders, we need to, just for the timing of the project, we need to be cognizant that it is not as going to be as simple as negotiating a contract internally, having a staff review, and then presenting to the board how we go about for the approval process. We will have to involve a third party. There's going to have to be also approval by the Federal Aviation Administration, which is going to require additional lead time for the project. And I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that.
Okay.
Is there an estimate as to what that additional lead time could or may be? I mean, in dealing with the FAA, could that be like 10 days or 6 months? And there's no way of knowing that, and I know there's no way to answer that, but,
Yeah. It's been my experience in working with the Federal Aviation Administration, they make every effort to review the documents and proceed with the projects. And I guess the best way to answer that is it depends on the task, and
Okay,
it depends on
yeah.
the complexity of the task. And another factor in this is if assuming that things, I would say it'd be in the normal course of business approving the task orders, assuming that we have the independent cost estimate plus the HDR within an acceptable and allowable range. The minute they start getting exceeding that is when the lead time really starts.
They gotta scrutinize it more, yeah.
We gotta scrutinize it, but you also have to go back and state with both parties, is there something that you missed, to making sure that.
Why
we're
is
doing
one
an
more than
apples-to-apples
the other, or
comparison.
whatever, yeah.
And all these things could take some time.
Sure, I get
on
it.
And so I just wanted to bring this to the attention of the board. so.
as a course of action though, for this board, do we estimate an additional 30 days? Do we need to do something like that when we're in the planning process? Just something to think about. And then that threshold after an independent cost estimate, that leeway, that's set by the FAA, correct?
That is set by the FAA.
And with regard to the independent cost estimate, the engineers that provide that, as long as they haven't bid on this project, they can be utilized. And do we seek them out, or does the FAA say, here's who you have to use?
No, we seek them out, and
Okay.
prior to doing this, we have a list of firms. When I went down to the 4-stage regional airport conference, there's firms that do exclusively independent cost estimates
Okay, great.
on for projects. And so we have in our, at least 2 firms that I'm aware of that perform independent cost
So there's a
estimates.
few
Yeah.
firms we
Okay.
can use.
Yeah.
Well, that's
And
good. So we're not,
That's helpful.
No, these are all good questions, and I think that the answer to your question on how long it's going to take is we'll know once we get through the first.
The first one, that's right, okay.
that will be the standard we'll have to work with.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
After the first one. So-
Okay.
Is HDR, whom we're contemplating signing this for, are they understanding this and this is common practice? They know what this is all about?
I believe HDR is very familiar with FAA's processes. and
So we're not
standards.
throwing them a
No, I don't think
curveball
this
here,
is
so,
gonna,
all right.
Blindside them the least bit, but I guess I'm speaking for.
That's what I'm asking, I just need to know, so,
Been through it many a time.
got it. All right,
So
that's all the
Jerry,
questions I have.
Just, Jerry, as a follow-up, so when you look at the magnitude of this project, you're already doing some pre-planning, you're looking at how some tasks might be broken out. Are there certain points at which you believe already in looking at the project that you could identify tasks that might need that additional cost analysis in advance, and so that we could maybe work on it a little bit earlier, or at least be ready to go sooner than later?
When the design process starts, that's most likely when you will be required to do an independent estimate, yes. Because those contracts tend to be well over $100,000. The rest will, task orders will be probably under.
How many task orders are we talking about in the course of the development of this project? Do you know how,
Well,
are we talking about
initially
2 or 50, or what's the?
We will,
That's a good
initially,
question.
the task orders are based on the number of property owners.
Mhm.
So we'll develop task orders around those. Then in addition to any other miscellaneous type services, for example, obtaining a federal release
Mhm.
would be a separate task order. And the reason for that is so we can scope each one of those separately, assign a specific cost. So as Mike pointed out, you have the opportunity to review those costs and activities associated with that specific task. Once it goes to the design process, those will in part be driven by the anticipated amount of federal dollars that FAA has advised that we would get at any one fiscal year. And so the scope of work and the services will be associated based in part on that dollar amount that they would issue what they typically call a go letter or proceed with the project. Now, before that, and during the course of getting the big picture, as you recall, we prepare a pre-application every year for what we refer to as ACIP data sheets or capital improvement program sheets. Each of those sheets has an opinion of probable costs associated with it. And it also then identifies any potential fees that are typically associated, whether it be design, administrative, or legal, that's associated with that particular project. Those are due to FAA on December 22nd of this year, and so we will update those as we have in the past, prepared those CIPs for board review and signature and then submittal. FAA uses them to program then funding for this particular project. So that's why they're updated annually every year, because priorities change, funding opportunities change, and so that reflects that and captures any changes that may have occurred during the course of this fiscal year.
So as I understand, each task order will need to be approved by the board.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's important to note also, Mr. Chairman, this is a very good point. Each task order according to contract documents will be a supplemental add-on to the contractor's
Yes.
supplemental.
Oh, like a addendum to the, okay, got it.
Yeah.
So that's my understanding as well.
Okay.
But it will be in accordance with the master agreement that
That we're ready to-
asking,
today.
where
Right.
staff is asking to be approved this evening.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Call the question.
Okay. Very good. There's been a motion and a second to approve this master agreement, subject to only to FAA approval, which will be forthcoming, I assume. So, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Any other items, either of the gentlemen at the end of the table?
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody else from the board have any questions,
Are we due
comments?
for a quarterly meeting anytime soon? Is this counting as one of our quarterly meetings?
This
I
counts.
believe this counts as one of the quarterly meetings, but I know we also have on discussion on the agenda is
Yeah.
the next meeting date and time.
If I understand correctly, you'll, Jerry, have some documents that need to be approved before December 22nd for us to submit to the FAA?
That would be
CIP?
the pre-application capital improvements program. We'd like you to review those and approve those. And we can email those out if you like, or email them to Mike, and he can distribute them to the board for you.
Do we need a meeting before signing those?
Yeah. In the past, it's been planning as studies.
I think they'll be pretty much like they were last
Yeah.
year.
So
Yeah.
what the
Okay.
discussion was, we didn't really have the board approve them in the past. It was
Yeah.
for planning purposes.
I see.
And then, obviously, as tasks are taken on, we'll adjust the data sheets as needed.
I would anticipate we'll need a meeting in December, assuming that this contract is only approved by FAA. We may want to, approve the first task orders. So I don't know if the board wants to, do you want to just set a meeting? Would it help you, gentlemen, or would you prefer to send out emails as we normally do?
I think maybe they can get their heads together and see.
Figure out what works and-
I got wide open time.
Yeah, I'm
so.
pretty open in December.
You want to
Except
work on
towards the
setting
end.
a time? and email it,
The last
do that.
couple of weeks may be
Yeah, that'd be a little rough,
bit of
but
time.
let's look at the first couple weeks of December as a, try to pinpoint it.
Sure, yes, sir.
Then
Send out an email.
should be able to do that. Okay,
Public announcement.
yep. Okay, very good. Nothing else? Stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.